Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 113. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, and commented. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality in every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Cerberus is an organization that truly puts the athlete first, is actively working towards providing the best quality gear at an affordable price. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus has quickly evolved into a global brand symbolizing quality and trust. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And I want to thank Sport Kilt for sponsoring the show as well. Born in Scotland and stitched in America, Sport Kilt offers the highest quality custom kilts and accessories. Every Sport Kilt is made in the USA of machine washable polyester blend fabric, offering an alternative to the traditional heavy wool kilts. Sport Kilt products are made for people who like to be active and make a statement while they train, compete, play, and adventure. Their kilts are designed for comfort, freedom, and style, made for all the brave ways you move. Check out the No Pants, All Glory selection of kilts and shop the best collection of high-quality, American-made sport kilts and accessories at sportkilt.com and use promo code TSG to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Chad Snodgrass. Chad is the director of sports performance at Old Dominion University and the head football strength coach for the Monarchs. Snodgrass joined the ODU sports performance department in January of 2022. Prior to ODU, he spent his entire career at his alma mater, West Virginia University. Snodgrass started as an intern coach, assisting with the football and other Olympic teams on campus before spending 2 years as a graduate assistant, where he also oversaw women's soccer and continued to work with the football program. He was promoted to a full-time position and spent the next 7 years as an assistant coach for the Mountaineers football team. Snodgrass was a 3-year letter winner for the Mountaineers on the offensive line, playing both guard and tackle from 2009 to 2011. In his senior season, he earned both the Hammer Award and the Iron Mountaineer Award. Those honors are given to the team's most dedicated and hardest working individual and given to the hardest working member of the team, voted upon by the strength and conditioning staff, respectively. Snodgrass continues to develop himself as an athlete and continues to train following his collegiate playing days and currently competes in powerlifting. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Chad Snodgrass. How's it going, everybody? Today, we've got Coach Chad Snodgrass on the show. How's it going today, Coach?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. We were kind of chatting before we got going. We both just got back from the conference, so kind of sharing a little bit of our opinion, but didn't get to run into each other before that. So now we're kind of making up for not getting to see each other at the conference because I think we're all overwhelmed with that. So Hey, this is perfect timing. We get to meet now. So, hey, I appreciate you coming on. And without any further ado, can you kind of share with our audience a little bit like how you got involved in the strength game, like what kind of sports you played growing up to like your competitive career at WVU, playing football, and then kind of leading into some powerlifting now?
I've got a interesting athletic story. So I started out doing soccer and gymnastics. So my sister was the athlete in our family. She was incredibly talented and everything. So I lived in her shadow my whole life, really. I would walk down the hallway to my bedroom, and it would just be all her medals, the key to the city, like holds all kinds of records and this sport, that sport. So I always looked up to her. We spent all my childhood traveling the country following her AAU basketball career. So we were all over the place. And I didn't play football until middle school. My mom would not let me. My dad, every year, he wanted to sign me up for football every year. And it almost got to a point where he was trying to get me going to tryouts without my mom knowing, but she found out right beforehand. I wasn't always the biggest kid. I was kind of small and frail, and all of a sudden grew up and had a big love for anything that was aggressive. Kind of typical boy, but my mom opened a gym when she first moved to our hometown. It was a Nautilus Fitness Center, all powerlifting, all bodybuilders, high intensity training, old school, kind of gritty. When I was in middle school, when I started playing football, she said, "All right, well, if you're gonna play football, you have to lift weights." I said, "That's fine." So seventh grade came, and I'm playing football and lifting weights, and I just fell in love with the aspect of training. Seeing people when they were huge and super strong, I would get in there and try to keep up and do my best and kind of get pushed off to the side. But there was a couple individuals that were in there was pretty cool. Like Phil Pfister trained there, the world's strongest man. So I got to kind of take after him, see him train, learn some things from him, which is pretty interesting and pretty special opportunity. But my dad and I both loved wrestling, and we loved like all the action movies. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, John Claude Van Damme, these dudes are huge. I want to be just like them. But kind of getting into that, seeing all these dudes being have huge muscles, being really awesome, saving the world. It's like, man, I want to be like those guys. So I wanted to be an actor, and then I want to be just like those guys. And so training, playing football, um, kind of getting into, throughout high school, just loved training, everything about it. Didn't have a strength coach. My mom kind of showed me some things off to the side. And I kind of took what my sister was learning in college and kind of just created my own. So I was coaching myself and coaching my teammates in high school, uh, doing a lot of things probably wrong, but it was still fun. We were, in there training every day. And then we got to a point where our firemen in our local town, they became our strength coaches. And it was probably one of the coolest experiences of my life. These dudes would roll up. They're all like the action movies. Like they roll up, sleeveless shirts on their fire truck, and they hop off in their boots, and we go in there and start banging weights, and it was awesome. That kind of got me rolling into training itself. But then going to West Virginia, playing football there, having some very special strength coaches that play a large part in my life, still to this day. I'm very fortunate to have Mike Joseph as my head strength coach, Daryl Bauer, Kevin McAdam, Brian Fitzpatrick. These were all my strength coaches throughout my college career, and people I'm still very close with today that still help mentor me. So played through college, got hurt a lot. So I spent more time in the doctor's office having surgery than I did on the football field. So the first time I met Mike, I was 3 days out of surgery. So multiple shoulder surgeries on my foot, back and forth in and out of my hip, and then slowly but surely. But the coolest part for me getting hurt all the time, and the biggest part I take from it was the connection I made with my coaches and the impact that they showed me every single day. Just working hard, putting in what you're going to get out of it. really showing me what training was. And when I went to college, I wanted to be a physical therapist. I wanted to be just like my sister. So I was trying to follow her footsteps the whole way. But then I found out you got to work with old people, and that was just not what I was trying to do. So I love training, I love coaching. Um, Mike would kind of use me as a strength coach on the floor, and he would help have me holding guys accountable in the groups. So I just kind of had a knack for coaching and loved it. So I became an intern with all Olympic sports during my college career, still playing football, interning when I wasn't in class, working with all different sports. And then as my college career got just wrapping up, I knew I wasn't the best O lineman we had. So if I wasn't the best, I knew I wasn't going to go to the NFL. You know, played a lot, had some success, but I was a realist. So I knew that if I wanted to become a strength coach, I had to get in it as quick as I could. So fortunate enough to play in the Orange Bowl in January 2012. We beat Clemson 70-33, one of the biggest wins in West Virginia history. And then 5 days later, I was full time intern with W football. So I didn't skip a beat, right into it. Interning with every sport, interning with football, doing whatever I had to do, trying to find a graduate assistant position in the time. Was very fortunate enough that Mike was able to hire me on as a graduate assistant. So did my 2 years there. My wife now, who we met in college, she was a cheerleader. I was a football player, kind of the typical stuff. When I was a GA, she was pregnant with our son Maximus. We had him, and then right as I was finishing up my graduate assistant, she was pregnant with our daughter Scarlett. So bam, right into it. 2 kids, GA salary, wife's working 2 jobs, waiting tables. So we were living it, but it was a great experience for both of us. We learned a lot during that time. So we're super young parents, uh, going right into it. Mike was fortunate. I was fortunate for Mike to hire me as full time. I worked a almost 2 full years on the Olympic side before Mike brought me back to football, and I worked there from West Virginia in total from 2012 to 2021, which led me to Old Dominion University in January of 22. I've been here since.
No, that's awesome. It's kind of crazy to see like those overlap. You were almost like preparing for what was next. And even maybe even if that wasn't like the ultimate plan, like it kind of unfolded that way for you too. And you got to spend a good quality like amount of time like at your alma mater and kind of worked your way up the ladder. And I mean that's great. It's kind of it's reminiscent of like a lot of strength coaches like origin stories. It ends up like being like and maybe not the necessarily the best player, like a hardworking player, but like somehow just short end of the stick always hurt. Um, and then you kind of find a different way to be impactful, like within the team if you can't be on the field. And sometimes that's being hurt, and you kind of find a love for coaching and training because ultimately that's what gets you back to actually playing, like an appreciation for like the weight room and kind of development and progress because maybe you don't have the skill set to match what some people have a little bit more naturally without maybe working as hard. So it's definitely a cool story and kind of work your way up and cool to see like now you kind of get to a point where you get to do a little bit more like we talked about before we got going like build a program. How's it been kind of from the time you were at West Virginia, which is well known and it's one of kind of those older historic programs to get to a place like Old Dominion, which has been around for a while, but is kind of coming into its own right, and you're on a little bit more of the ground floor of kind of building that program and shaping it how you want it to be. Like, what's kind of in the future for you guys, and how's it been kind of leading the ship, like in your first couple years there?
It's been a great experience. I've learned a lot. I had to learn a lot of things really fast too, but I felt like I was pretty prepared coming into the situation at hand, just because of being able to work with the people I was fortunate enough to work with and work for. They set me up for success. But getting the buy-in, having players that they were already there. I was the new guy. So getting them to trust what I was saying and doing, showing them the benefits of how we were going to train and what we're going to be known for. Told them the first day that we're going to be known for the toughest and most in shape team that anybody will ever play. So it was a news flash for a lot of guys, the way the standard and the execution that we do things. We have a high level of repetition integrity. So every repetition is done to perfection. The goal is perfection with every rep. And our coaches coach that way, and our guys understand what that means every time they step in the weight room, because we're going to treat every day like game day. So getting them to initially buy in at first, a lot of them were kind of upset with the approach I took, because I wanted them to understand the techniques and everything that we were going to do and the expectations at hand. So we started out incredibly basic, and we got really good at the basics. And these are college athletes. They're not weightlifters or powerlifters. I'm going to train them as such. I don't train them like I train myself. I might pull some things in and out of there, but getting them to understand the expectations of every movement and of every repetition. That it took some time to get them to understand how to own each and every rep. But for now, we've got a great grasp of that. And with the kind of world we're living in now, we're getting guys in every 6 months, every year, with different training backgrounds and training philosophies. But the standard remains the same no matter what. And consistency is what we pride ourselves on as a coaching staff.
No, that's awesome. With like when you're going to kind of establish like all those standards and kind of be known for something and kind of go in with like some uncompromising like variables and like character traits that you want your team to kind of embody. Like you have a staff and now you're kind of in charge of kind of running that program. Obviously, like a lot of it is run through the head coach, but like and you're in charge of the strength and conditioning aspect of it. So it's still you're still a large part of the program, even if like some of it is still coming from like the head sport coach. So when you kind of go about like bringing on your own staff, how do you kind of pick and choose who you bring on within you like your own department to make sure that they're kind of embodying the same things or they're echoing the same like principles that you want, especially like when you're starting a new program?
Yeah. So Ricky Ronnie's our head coach. He and I see eye to eye on a lot of things, almost everything. Or sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it can be a bad thing, because we agree on a lot. Uh, his Our motto is 1-0, and when I met him and he spoke about that, and my motto of repetition integrity and every rep is individualized meshed really quickly. So we were able to communicate on something within a matter of minutes of meeting. So going ahead and starting that aspect from the get go put us with a great foot forward. But building a staff, I've got a great staff. I've got 4 assistants. They do a great job with me. They keep me level headed sometimes too, which is awesome. I lean on them a lot. They each have their own responsibilities and everything, and they own those responsibilities really well. But each of them, when hiring and when choosing them specifically, I'm looking for the best people I can find. So I want great people. I want someone who is consistent every day, who's hungry to learn, who's never satisfied, but who is also understanding that there is more to life than just sports. Because that's going to build a better relationship with each athlete. You understand who they really are just outside of their sport as well. It's going to have the build a trust factor, and the better trust we can have, the further that athlete's going to go, and the more we're going to be able to coach them. We can coach them further than what their potential could possibly be. So looking for people who are eager to learn, never satisfied with their knowledge base, but also just really good people. Because we do spend so much time together, you don't want to spend it with people you don't get along with and don't like.
No, yeah, that's a great point. That I think that often goes kind of overlooked. That at the end of the day, like as a strength coach, especially in college and especially in football too, like there's going to be some heavy parts of the season, and you're going to be on the road. You're going to be kind of in the dungeon of the weight room. You're going to be on the field. You're kind of war gaming and planning everything, and if you don't like those other four people you're with, it makes the job a lot worse.
It
So
100% can be.
I completely understand. So when you're kind of looking back, now that you kind of you've gone through two seasons now, like two competitive falls, right? So when you're kind of getting out of the fall, like oftentimes like strength coaches and especially like football, like you can't go without saying like wins or losses. Like even basketball, baseball, some of these like strength conditioning jobs, you're hired and fired based off of the record, which ultimately goes on the head sport coach's resume, not really the strength coaches in a sense. So when like the end of the fall comes, like bowl games are done, how do you kind of sit down like with yourself individually and then maybe like with your staff as well or the head coach and say like, hey, what do we do well? What do we do wrong this year? Like what do you kind of think ultimately defines like a successful season, even if it doesn't necessarily uh, dictate that when the results on the scoreboard?
Yeah, you're 100% right. Everyone always looks to wins and losses, and sometimes it's a double-edged sword. It's a be able your wins show how hard you work, or your losses show how hard you didn't work. So you have to look at that. We look at injury rates. We look at performance throughout the year. We try to track everything. So were we able to stay strong? Were we able to continue to gain speed throughout the year? Are we hitting specific speeds on certain days throughout the entire year? Are we able to logically say how our training went? Um, did it help us put us in the best position? Were our guys fresh on Saturday? Did we have guys cramp? What type of injuries were they? Continuous? Were we able to be unscathed without seizing any injuries? So looking back on how healthy we were, and that's for a physical standpoint, but a mental standpoint, looking at who we were in the fourth quarter, who we were during times of adversity. Did we fold? Did we push forward and pursue excellence? Who were we when our backs were against the wall? And that's what we focus on the most. This is a collision sport. Injuries are going to happen. Our job is to decrease the chance of it as much as possible. But they are going to happen. I always tell our guys, you guys are modern day gladiators. The people are paying to watch you fight every day. So that's why we have to train to build up our armor. So utilizing that, looking at who we were in times of adversity, did our culture ever take a hit? Was there a time where we were unsure of our guys? Were our guys unsure of themselves? Um, and we kind of track that throughout the year. But utilizing the mental and physical aspects and separating those, we're looking at injuries, looking at freshness, where we peaked at the right time, that our training allowed us to reach our true potential, and then who we were in times of adversity. Were we ever too high, too low? How consistent were we on a training basis as well as competitive basis?
That's great. Now you kind of talked about adversity a lot, like kind of with that response too. So it's kind of hard. Like you see some places around that kind of just like maybe throw like military training in there, or they throw like something like super competitive in there, like and maybe from an outside perspective, you don't see the purpose behind it. You don't see like you really don't know what that program is going through, or what the type of people it is. Like people just kind of take it for face value, what they're doing. Like when you talk about kind of building like that mental and physical resiliency with your team and making sure that like in moments of like adversity, like they're still in a great position to be competitive and not falter. How do you kind of take like a practical approach towards that? Is it like conversations with the team? Is it like with the leadership? Is it like some of those competitive things? Is it like high rep sets or things like that? Like how do you kind of approach trying to build that maybe in the off season so that they can showcase it on the field?
Yeah, we're going to put them in adversity, like hard situations the entire year. They're going to be safe, but it's going to be hard situations. Every day is competitive. Every lift, every training session is competitive. We tally wins, losses, what place did you finish in conditioning, change of direction. You know, if it's a plus set, we're ranking guys on who got the most at their X percentage. But we rank everybody and then we rank them with inside their position as well. So it's always competitive. you're seeing who's competitive and who's not competitive. Um, I always want to teach our guys like how to win, how to want to win. The more I think that's something that's innate, like it's something that you're born with, like wanting to win. And I think a lot of elite competitors have that in them, and it's on us to make sure we bring that out. But having different aspects of that throughout the calendar year is always going to help. But different situations, training wise, putting them in situations that are going to allow each other to lead themselves as well as lead their groups as well. We do have a leadership council that we kind of lean on to spread different messages of that nature, but put them in the hottest fire and getting them to understand that's when, it's kind of cliche, the hottest fire builds the toughest steel, but getting them to understand that because the fourth quarter is hard. Overtime is hard. Making a game-winning drive is difficult. So getting them to understand that just because there's a rhyme or a reason for this, putting them in those situations to be uncomfortable and having them thrive in those situations as well. But it takes conversations, it takes situations, it takes extent of coaching outside of the weight room as well. And sometimes it's not just sets and reps, different motivational tactics to getting to know the guys on a different level. That way you can motivate them in those times of adversity.
No, that's great. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, winning is not inherently easy. So
Yeah.
making sure that you're putting them in those situations, and I think most people when you get to the Division 1 level and like you're playing football, you're especially when you're playing a collision sport, a contact sport, like you want to win. Most people don't know necessarily like what it takes or like how to win. And that's a great thing to kind of like teach them outside of just the weight room, outside of practice, because like even most people think like every football player likes to lift, and I'm sure you can attest to that. When push comes to shove, if they had a choice to like go out to practice more, or maybe go in the weight room and start doing plus sets and like do some of the percentages in the off season they're prescribed, they might take football practice before they take another lifting session.
They're football players, not lifters. I mean, some guys, especially in the trenches, love the lift, or there's certain particular guys who love it. That's great, but not everyone's going to love it. So getting them to understand that the process behind it is what really matters. I'm sure there's guys who are incredibly successful in professional athletics that couldn't stand to train, but they understood what training did for them, and that's where they became more successful.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I try to tell my athletes too. Like, if you don't inherently like it or enjoy it, like there is some sort of respect that needs to be had with what the process looks like and what you're able to develop from the weight room, and realize that kind of at this level, you can't really get by without training and without lifting. You might for a little bit, but like you said, those injuries are going to sneak up, especially in a collision sport when like the biggest guy is going to win in the trenches. The strongest, the fastest guy is going to win. It's just physics. So you kind of found a way like after your career, like you talked about when you were getting into coaching a little bit more, like as like kind of the injury bug got to you, like you found a love for the weight room, and obviously like with your mom and like kind of that the compromise of football means you have to start lifting before you're able to do both. But after football, you kept training and kind of lifting and like got on the platform a couple times too, right?
Yeah, I got into powerlifting. So when I was a player, I was an athlete. My head strength coach, Mike Joseph, was always like, when you're done playing, you need to continue to compete at something. He's like, I think powerlifting would be great for you. So these guys see me still compete. It does have its positives, but I always took that like, yeah, I'll compete. And then when I worked Olympic for a couple years, I worked alongside of Tanner Cole. He's assistant director at West Virginia, and he's a longtime powerlifter. He was an equipped lifter. He did all kinds of awesome stuff. Really strong, really intelligent. So Mike kind of kickstarted it, and then Tanner really got me bought in. We trained together every day. He was teaching me a lot of different things, just about how to program for myself and moving forward. And program is one of my favorite things to do. I love the program. Like, I could sit there all day and do it. There's something about the X's and O's and the foundation of it that I love. And So he really got me into it. We competed together in our first meet in 2014. It was actually a super total, which it's snatch, clean and jerk, and then squat, bench, deadlift. It was brutal to train for, but it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Um, I don't do any weightlifting now, but then I was doing both, and it was a lot of fun. That really got me going. And once I competed that one time, that was it. I was hooked. So I've competed. I think I try to do one a year, but I haven't competed since 2021. I was actually supposed to compete this past weekend before the conference. 4 weeks out, I had a really bad pec strain, so I just there's all kinds of meets that I can always sign up for, and I'll find another time to be on the platform this summer.
Oh, no doubt. No, it's kind of the nice thing about like some of those strength sports, like when you actually go powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting, if you kind of miss a meet, even as long as it's maybe not like a big one, if you're kind of going local or regional, it's nice because it's the same movements. So you can
Yeah,
kind of just all right, well, I'll just shift my training over a little bit too, which is kind of nice. I was the same way, like the week before the conference, I was supposed to have a Highland Games, and it's the same events every single time. So it doesn't like hurt if I miss it. And then if I just kind of go do it, I can use it as a training number. But luckily, luckily one of my teams made the NCAA tournament. So I was like, this is a good excuse to kind of
yeah, that's
skip this competition. But no, that's great. I haven't done a super total yet. So uh
that
that
was
me
that was taxing. That was my first meet, and it definitely made the next couple feel a lot easier.
I think so too. Like when you take all the pressure off of, hey, I have 3 attempts at these 3 events. Or you have 3 attempts at like clean and jerk and snatch, and you're just like, well, now I have 5 events and all these attempts. Like it takes a little bit pressure off when you don't do so well on another and be like, well, I got 4 more I can work on. So
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
no, that's great.
But
Hey,
yeah, so
so
right now I'm chasing 800 is my goal right now. Yeah, trying to squat 800. So my best competition squat is 751. Um, I've squatted just above that in training. So just continue to progress that. That's the goal right now.
is this all raw too?
Classic. So I'll wear wraps.
Okay. Damn, it's still way more than I want to touch. It's I think my best yoke is still way under that, and that's not even squatting it. So it's a it's a big number to think about, but no, that's great like that you found like a different kind of passion like after college, and I think like your coaches are exactly right. Like I think every strength coach should end up finding something to kind of compete in and maybe not like necessarily like have to step on the platform, but at least find something where like your goal, like you have a training goal where you're still working towards. Because I think that's the biggest difference between kind of just working out and like being healthy. Like that's great for anybody to have, but as a strength coach, as someone that is like kind of developing and preaching these things to their athletes who have goals like on the field and performance wise, it makes it such an easier conversation to have with your athletes when you're like, hey, coach, what do you kind of like, what's your goals? Like, what are you working towards? Even if it's something as dumb as like, hey, I want to be able to like learn to climb a rope or any
Yeah.
sort of like strength avenue too. Like it becomes something so cool where the athletes are like, man, they're older, they're still working towards something. Like this is not just a when I'm only for sports. This is something I can do for the rest of my career. You kind of see it's an easy kind of buy-in with your guys. I'm sure like just football career is big enough, but when you add on top of like, hey, I'm still training, I'm still like pushing myself, like how does that benefit you and the rest of your staff?
A big thing for me, and this is very, very meathead mindset, to be honest with you, but when for me, being able to squat 800, that's my goal. But also, I always want my kids to be like, my dad's stronger than your dad. And so, like, when we go to the pool or something like that, I don't want to be just some normal looking dad. Like, when I go walk in and go do a cannonball, I want my wife to be like, yeah, you see that monster is walking across there? That's my husband. So there's more than one reason why I still train, but I want to be strong. I want to push myself because I'm not going to be able to do it forever. And I tell them, our athletes the same thing. I'm training, for my goals. So it's like self accountability. Like I tell them my goals. So they all know that I'm trying to squat 800. So it holds me accountable, but also shows them that I'm not afraid to be held accountable by them. So it opens up communication for us. It's continue to build our relationships. That, I ask them their goals. I meet with every athlete. They tell me three of their goals, and we talk about what they want to do with their life and their training and where they want to go with it. And I don't ask them, you want to squat this, and, 405 and 425, like, what's the big deal? So I don't ask them the strength numbers. I ask them where they want their training to take them, performance wise, where do they want them to take it, later in life, and what you can learn from training itself. There's a lot of things you can learn from training. Just hard work, consistency, self accountability, discipline. Like, there's so much you can learn from that because it's you versus the weight. And if you say you're going to do it and you didn't do what was required of you to prepare for that, you're going to fail. And then you're going to have to get back up and look yourself in the mirror. But I wasn't disciplined enough. I didn't hold myself accountable enough. That's why I didn't reach my goal. So it puts a lot of self accountability, like man in the mirror type of aspects. But the guys, they do like to watch me train. I try to train when they're in meetings, so I don't become a distraction while they're like weighing in or they're pre-fueling before practice. I do try to train when they're doing stuff, but they do get hyped up. It puts a little bit more pressure on me when I'm lifting and they're in there, which I love. It, I've hit some of my best like rep sets and things like that when they're walking around because no, you cannot fail. Like, failing is great, but you must stand up. So it's a different atmosphere, that competitive atmosphere. They know I'm very competitive, and that stems from my whole staff. Uh, every day at our staff meeting, we end it with be the best strength coach on the floor because it is a competition. We're all out trying to be as a team and coach with each other, but we're also trying to be the best. If you're not trying to be the best, you're not competing. So, and our guys know that. We compete as a staff against each other in random stuff. It could be a donut eating, it could be a 20-yard sprint, burpee jump, or just random. But we're always competing, so that kind of sets the tone for them as well. But them seeing me train and knowing that I still train definitely gives self accountability for myself, but lets them know that I'm still trying to improve on what I'm doing as well. So it's kind of like we're in the same boat, just different directions.
Oh, I love that. That's great. It's cool to see like your staff still like compete, and I love that too. Like thinking, hey, who's gonna be the like the best coach for the day? Like who's gonna out coach everybody else on the floor? And like a rising tide raises all ships, and all five of you are really trying to work towards developing, like you said, the most physically tough, like the best condition, like hardest working team there is. So if you guys aren't emulating that yourselves and kind of being competitive, like you're doing a disservice to your athletes, and like the best approach is for them to kind of watch you guys do it right away. So
Yeah.
if you're doing that from the get-go, like you're in a great position. When you kind of talk about like that self-accountability and you were starting to set that up and like kind of telling your athletes like your goals and everything, like I mean it's pretty cool to be the a big goal to be hey the strongest dad in the neighborhood for sure. That's that's one maybe those guys don't have kids yet, but that's something they can definitely like steal from you when they're a little bit older as well. But how do you kind of approach that? Like you're having individual meetings with them and you're kind of focusing on the process more than just the outcome of like, hey, I want to put 5 pounds on my squat. Like for you, it's still about the process. It is a number too, but you're not trying to have them focus on that because the main goal for them is in the weight room. But how do you kind of tell them like, hey, I'm practicing what I preach. Like, I'm not asking you guys to do anything I'm not doing here. I'm being vulnerable. Here's my goals. Is it something you tell the team? Is it something you kind of maybe tell individuals in meetings that kind of are wary and don't know how to set goals? Like, how do you kind of approach that?
It's on an individual basis. So when we talk about their goals, I tell them mine as well. You know, so my goals this year is the number one goal for me as a coach, is to be consistent every day. I want them to know that I'm going to be the same person no matter what. And that's always been my goal and always continue to be my goal. And then I tell them, hey, this is what my goal is at home. I want to do, spend more time one-on-one with my wife. I want to make sure, like, on days I don't have to be in super early, we get out there, we have a cup of coffee. Our thing is we walk the dog together. We've got a 135-pound cane corso named Christina that we walk our dog, and we have like great conversations. We plan out days. That's some of my favorite times. And it's a 30 to 45-minute walk, morning and evening. That's like some of my favorite times. It's just she and I, we go walk and we talk. And I tell them that stuff. I tell them, okay, this is how I want to be a better dad. I want to be more patient. I've got my son, Maximus is 11, and he's very talented at a lot of things. And sometimes I'm probably too hard on him, but one day he'll appreciate it. I don't know when. One day he'll appreciate that I am hard on him in all aspects of life. So I tell them, like, I'll be more patient. Like my daughter Scarlett, she's super tough and is a swing first type of person. So I tell them, like, hey, I want to make sure that she understands that I've got a loud voice, I've got a great temper. She understands that, hey, one day I want to marry somebody who's similar to my dad. So I got to make sure I'm doing the right things every day, so she has something to look up to and as an example. And I tell these guys all that. This is how I want to be a better husband. This is how I want to be a better dad. This is how I want to be a better coach. So I'm always trying to build a relationship with them to get them to understand. And I always tell them this, and it's true. I coach you guys like I coach my son and my daughter. I would never want anyone to coach them differently. So I don't berate them. I coach them hard, but there's always a sense of accountability with them. And I tell them that up front in the first individual meetings, and I continue to tell them that.
No, that it's kind of it's tough love, and
Yeah,
if you're coaching them the same way that you want your kids to be coached, like whether it be by you or if they're at a university one day or they have their sport coaches too, it's great to kind of emulate that and make sure that it's kind of like the point is made. Like you like you said, you kind of had kids at a young age. Was there kind of a shift like before you had kids, like maybe in your coaching style, or like looking back at it now, do you see like maybe the style of how you were coaching people had changed a little bit, maybe even as they got older as well?
absolutely. I think I was always more of like the hammer, confrontational type of coach, like in your face. And some guys can handle that, some guys can't. So as I got older, as my kids were growing, I started to learn better patience, understanding that not everyone is coached the same. And Daryl Bauer would always tell me that. He said, you can't just get in every person's face. You respond to that. It doesn't mean they're going to respond to it. So growing as a coach, that was one of the biggest things I always try to work on was understanding each player. Each player is going to be coached differently. And that goes from working with female athletes, working with meathead athletes, working with guys who don't like to train, getting to understand the process, but having patience with them, getting to understand and what training can do for them, and how I have to coach everyone individually. The standard's a standard, but everyone is coached slightly different for the most part. But the biggest part is you have to building a relationship. It took me a while to understand that, and as I got a little older in my career, understanding the relationships and how important they were. And I always look back to my relationship with my strength coaches. Uh, so that was the biggest part for me. Once I really understood that that kind of that was probably a turning point in my coaching style. I'm still very intense, and I will continue to always be like that. But at the same time, they got to know it's coming from somewhere of care. And how I realized that is when my dad was really sick, and before he passed away, he told me that as long as Mike Joseph is you're with him, I'm fine. You'll be fine. That was like one of the last serious conversations we had before he passed away. And that made me realize that he saw the relationship Mike and I had and understood, how great that was for me, becoming a man and learning how to do these things on my own. Because he put all that trust into Mike, for me going there. So for me to see that, take a step back and understand that relationship and the power of that relationship, that's when I really took a turn in how I was coaching, how I was becoming more patient and things of that nature.
No, that's great advice too. And I mean, I think you can echo, it's just like the relationship is everything. Like building that trust, like having confidence that someone has your best interests in mind. All those things are huge when you're trying to get someone to do something difficult or they're going to be put in tough situations. I'm sure you've come across this because every coach has at some point, but being the head coach, it might be maybe a little different approach of what you've done in the past. So like with players that like inevitably not every player is going to like respond to your style of coaching. And like you said, you want to make sure that you're individually coaching people like based off their personality, how they respond to stuff, and get to know them a little bit better. Do you think there's ever a point in time that it's just like, hey, that me and this player like button heads, like we can't communicate at all, like I have four other coaches on staff. Maybe me and this player just don't talk. Is that something you feel like you could do as a head like coach for a football team, or is it something that like, hey, I just got to keep building a better rapport with this player. I just like I'll crack through eventually. Like I got to try a different approach. Like has that happened in the past for you, or like do you see it differently now being a head versus maybe when you're an assistant, you're like, hey, I just can't get with this guy. Let me just worry about my position group.
Yeah, as a head strength coach, you can't quit on building a relationship. That's going to be something you have to stay consistent with and be very resilient with. And understand that there's going to be trial and error, but that's where you can really lean on your staff, and that's why hiring the right staff members are so crucial. Having those guys be able to be extensions of you. Maybe they can say the same thing but in a different tone, or say it in a different understanding. So having the right staff members be able to help with that translation or that gap of communication, but you can't quit on building a relationship because every person is important on that team. Doesn't matter if they're fourth string, whatever, or it's your All American. Doesn't matter. You're building a relationship with everybody because all the players are going to look to you when things are getting tough. So if you don't have everyone's faith, then you're not going to be successful. Are there going to be people you don't like or don't trust? Absolutely. But they're going to have to build it. And I think it's on the coach more than it is the player to build that relationship and to be open to listening to them. I think there's a lot of times where people don't want to hear what 18 to 22-year-old has to say. But if you put yourself out there and let them know that you're there for them, but you're also there for the team, I think that can go a long way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hey, so we kind of just got off like the conference and like it's you take it for what it is. You're either going to a lot of presentations, you're splitting that, you're networking, you're kind of talking to vendors or old friends. It's kind of a huge meathead gathering of every sort of the word. So when you're kind of looking at like developing yourself, like kind of bringing back information for your staff, bettering like the football team in general and the department, like what are some of your kind of favorite resources? I know we before we kind of got recording, you were talking about even going on site visits to kind of work on a building that you guys were working. How important is the networking opportunities and like going to see people in person, or what do you kind of recommend to coaches like for actually continuing education and development?
Yeah. So my staff and do think we do a really good job of continuing education. We do have meetings and we'll have presentations. People are in charge of bringing what they want to talk to about that day and presenting. It keeps us sharp. Like there's two sides of your sword in the battle of this. So you've got your practical side, you've got your applied side. So they each have to be equally as sharp. So making sure that we understand that there's science and backing what we're doing, but also the applied from the practical side. Like, are we doing the correct things? Or are we training with the right mindset? But also being able to back up what we think should be on paper. So uh, utilize different resources. So I put up all my staff has different responsibilities to be able to bring different things to the table. We program together. I want all their input in it. They're all each hired for specific reasons. They all have different you avenues of what they're passionate about. So I have them bring that to the table. We sit on a whiteboard and we chalk up everything. We'll argue about things, and I tell them, like, all right, you bring an idea to the table. It's not because you like it or you think it works. I want to know why it works. How have you seen it work? Who else says it works? All right, this person says it works. All right, let's get them on the phone. Let's get them to explain to us why it works, educate us. So we're always trying to educate ourselves, educate each other. But I think one of the best things to do is to continue to reach out to people, ask them what they're doing differently, where they're evolving, but keep sharpening your own sword as well. Read research articles, continue to educate just by reading books. I think reading is underutilized. There's different types of reading. I know early in my career, I spent a lot of time reading just science based, kind of transition to our leadership roles and things like that. But I've even on my staff that they're going to read certain science-based books. I want to know about them. Take notes. I want to know about those notes you're taking, and let's present them to each other and let's present them to the staff and let's go over what we're teaching each other. So we better make sure we really know what we're talking about first. So, but also we're bettering each other as well. But I think that one of the best ways to communicate is calls, sites, going to visit people, challenging your mindset. I do think strength conditioning is it's a lot like religion. Everyone's got a different one. Everyone's got different mindsets and what they believe works and doesn't work. But I do think there's if you're not looking to better what you're doing now or making sure that you're utilizing different aspects of training, you're only limiting yourself. It's not fair to the athlete to just be stuck in your own way because you think it works or you oh I know it works. Well, you should be trying to broaden your horizons, continue to learn and educate yourself, but at the same time understanding that training's been around for hundreds of years. No one's reinventing the wheel. We're just bettering how it works.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like that constant improvement and kind of challenging your own ideals and like your thought process too. It's different when you're kind of by yourself with the program and you really kind of have to just think through or reach out to other people who might not necessarily have the same context. But when you're on a staff of five strength coaches and whatever other like volunteers or interns you kind of have with you, it's a lot more groupthink. And when you kind of go into that war room, it's like whatever the best idea's got to win at the end of this. And we're piecing all the best ideas together. And if you have confidence and conviction and what you care about and what you think should go into the program, then you sure as hell better defend it in there. And then we'll all come to the conclusion of this is the thing that we should have. But if you don't have people on your staff that are kind of questioning what you're doing or kind of behind closed doors, kind of checking you to make sure that the right stuff is going into the program, then there's no point in even having five people on staff. You got
Correct.
four more of you.
Yeah. So if I don't feel like someone is bringing ideas to the table, or if they're not working to better the process, we're going to have a hard conversation because if they're not willing to put in the effort to and take ownership of what we're coaching every day, then they're not going to be pushing their athletes very hard. They're not going to take ownership of the coaching as well. So we'll have a hard conversation. Luckily, I haven't had that, but you never know. It could happen.
No, that's a good point. Hey, so kind of with you, like kind of circling back to what your training looks like too, like it went under some different changes, like due to injury and like obviously you found a love for powerlifting and everything too. When you hit 800,
When
what do
I
you
hit it,
it,
I appreciate that. It's coming.
yeah, so what do you do after that? Like is it 8:15, 8:50 next or like how do you kind of make strength training and like kind of the iron game like lasts for a long time because inevitably at some point 800 is probably not going to go on your back anymore. So how do you
Correct.
kind of shift gears a little bit like looking 5, 10, 20 years ahead?
So once I squat 800, so I despise running. Like as an alignment, I do not like to run.
Me
I
either.
will if I have to. I'm a I like to think I'm a pretty solid athlete, but I do not like to run. So after I squat 800, I'm going to look to some distance running and things of that nature. Try to add in more of athleticism to my training. So adding in more jumping, sprinting, but I do want to run a little bit of distance. When I worked for Mike and I had Daryl and Kevin breathing down my neck to go on these like 3 and 4, 5 mile runs, uh, I got really good at it, but I don't run anymore. So getting back into that nature and making sure that I'm still athletic so that I can go down to basketball still, or if my kids want to race, I can go beat them. So making sure that I'm still an athlete, and still able to do athletic movements, but also try to increase my longevity in my life. So I walk around at 265, so probably cut that down a little bit and just stay as healthy as possible, but still strong. I've done it once, and my wife told me I looked weird. I went from 305 to 245, and she said, "You look weird." So I can't get that low. I got to find a happy medium where she's still proud of me when we go to the floor, take her shirt off, but also still able to be strong.
All right. So hey, 800 pounds, be the strongest dad in the neighborhood. Uh, hold off both kids before they get stronger than you. And
Correct.
all right, and then add a little bit of running in. All right, that's you got a full plate
Yeah.
on top of coaching for sure. So hey, like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, four
Okay.
questions, and maybe overtime at the end, but
Awesome.
we can go fast if you got them like quick at the hip, or if you need a
Okay.
little extra time, like feel free to expand on any. But you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and favorite athlete growing up.
Oh man. What got me really rolling, like talked about earlier, was the action figures. So Arnold Schwarzenegger really got me rolling. Um, the biggest influence in training, that was him. That's what really got me started. Thought it was awesome. Like, watching Pumping Iron, watching Predator, just man, that was everything. Um, Coaching wise, Mike Joseph is probably my biggest mentor, but Daryl Bauer is right there with me, right there with him. They both have pushed me in different avenues. So coaching wise, those two guys are very influential to me and still influential to me. Favorite athlete growing up was a huge world strongest man uh, fan, huge. But Randy Moss was like the guy, like, freak athlete from a local town near where I'm from in southern West Virginia. And like, watching him in high school at Marshall, man, it was just something else. He was probably my favorite athlete, mainly because he does things that I can't do.
Yeah, I don't not many people could do that stuff. So, hey, when you're not in the weight room and when you're not like on the platform lifting, coaching, what are some of kind of your hobbies maybe that you told us so far?
Man, so both of our kids are heavily involved in youth sports. So my wife and I are great taxi drivers. So wherever they need to go, we're on the road for it. We're going to continue our hobbies when we get older. But yeah, that's what we're not. If I'm not coaching, if I'm not at work, either my wife and I are walking that dog, or we're at some ball field or some gym.
All right. Hey, so if you weren't coaching, what do you think you would be doing as a professional right now?
I would probably be in the military. Uh, so when I was in high school, every male on both sides of my family were at some sort of military branch. So I was all in on doing that. Both my grandfathers were very decorated soldiers. I really looked up to both of them. They both had high influences on how I view hard work and effort, and about what like self-sacrifice really is. And those people, those two, men really put a big emphasis on that even at a young age. What hard work is and how hard work will be allowed to earn something. If something's easy, there's not much value to it. And I can remember like that was yesterday when he told me that. So I wanted to be in the military. When I was getting recruited in high school, it basically came down to West Virginia University and Army. I was accepted to West Point. I wanted to go, and but 18 years earlier, when I was born, my dad held me and said, "This boy will play for the Mountaineers one day." So, big influence on going to West Virginia. It was a great place for me to go. But they, grandfathers, uncles, father, they all like, you cannot go to the military. Just with my mindset, you're going to be in the front line, no doubt. So that's probably what I've been doing. I probably would have been in the military, and I probably would have been in some sort of law enforcement. My wife always jokes, like, "What are you going to do now if you want to coach?" I guess I'll go to FedEx and move boxes, and I'm pretty good at moving stuff. I can go grab that and move it over there.
That might be where all the strength coaches go eventually, just Amazon, just
Yeah.
stocking everything at this point in time. So, hey, setting up an ideal training day for yourself, like, hey, you're getting geared up, getting close for an 800 attempt. Like, what music is playing, and then like either the best day before it or the day you hit 800, what is the best post-training meal you're gonna crush after?
Music playing. So it's either going to be like Five Finger Death Punch, Slipknot, Corn, or if I really need to turn it to another level, I'm going to go no music and just silence. To be honest with you, what gets me really going at meets, my wife always goes with me. She'll like sit in the front row and she'll be crocheting like an old lady, but she's there helping me with my knee wrap. She's helping me up, throwing ammonia in my face, and she yells, "Come on, babe!" Oh man, I got chills thinking about it right now. When she yells that, I don't need music. That's my go-to. But heavy metal, some hard rock, but 50 Cent, that Mini Man, that's like top five favorite songs of all time.
All right.
Post training meal, gosh, I love breakfast food. So like, I'm gonna smash 6 to 10 eggs, give me a huge stack of pancakes, and as much chocolate milk as you can do.
All right. That's not a bad way to do it. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime, like if you're trying to sum up kind of what strength and conditioning and like coaching means to you, like can you sum it up in either one word or one phrase, like how you would kind of put it on a billboard for yourself?
One of my favorite quotes is "Pain is your greatest teacher," and the more pain you can endure, the better off you're going to be. You're going to learn from the scars that you have. And I think that's what training does. Training calluses you for whatever your goal is, whether it's performance based or what. If it's competition, training builds you those calluses to make you tougher. It makes you harder to beat, and it teaches you so much about it. But pain is your greatest teacher is probably a slogan that I would put with strength and conditioning.
No, I completely agree. That's a great one too. Like you're kind of like we talked about, you're forged in that fire and you're gonna come out stronger because of it. So if I don't know a lot of people that kind of are successful because everything came to them easy and because they were kind of given everything throughout the course of their career. The ones that had some setbacks, the ones that really challenged themselves outside the box and got in those uncomfortable situations, like became better and stronger for it. So I think
I,
it's a great quote.
that and then something that we say as a staff and as a team is own your reps. your reps or your resume. And when somebody walks by and sees you doing your reps, what are they going to think about you? So we put a lot of emphasis on each individual rep, like we talked about, but owning your reps, those reps being your resume of who you are as a man or a woman or as an athlete. I think that holds true, for as long as you live, and not just in training, but who you are when you're a dad, when you're a husband, when you're a boyfriend, when you're a student. Thinking about owning what you're doing and being accountable for it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. What you do every single rep, like what you do on a consistent basis, that's kind of who you are as a person. And that's, like you said, that's your resume for sure. So, hey, this has been awesome. I'm glad we got to do this, even though we didn't get to kind of link up at the conference. So, hey, for anybody that's got any questions for you, kind of want to follow along or touch base and follow ODU like this upcoming fall season, where can they get a hold of you, Coach?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm not the best at social media, but I do post here and there. But I am very active and responding to messages. So it's the.chad.snodgrass on Instagram. And my email is csnodgra@odu.edu. And I try to always have less than 24-hour response.
There we go. Hey, well, we'll link everything on there, and I know I know once 800 goes, it'll be pinned at the top, and that'll be a huge one. So that one at least has to go up there so everybody can see that.
Absolutely. It'll be up there. I'll be proud of
Nice.
that.
Nice. Well, we're looking forward to it, Coach, and good luck with that. And appreciate you coming on today. It was great to talk.
No, thank you. Appreciate having me.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.